Ladies and gents, today we're going to kill two birds with one stone. Firstly, I'm on my way to Shearsby Valley now. There's a tackle shop there as well as obviously the fishery, and I'm going to get my bait for a match. I've got a match tomorrow. I want to make sure I've got some decent bait for it. But while we're there, I'm going to get my fishing fix. We all know the summer's coming to an end, and I'm really keen on getting as much fishing time in as possible at the minute. So I've got a margin pole in the van. I've got my box, a little bit of kit, you know, carry-all that just sort of sits in my van. I'm just going to borrow a landing net and borrow a landing net pole from Dan at the fishery. No keep nets, just a bare minimum of kit. I'll buy a pint of maggots from Dan and just see what I can catch. Probably go on the front lake of the fishery. There's loads of different species in there. Tench, crusions, bream, might catch a barbel, that'd be good if we could. But I'm just hoping we get an hour's fishing in before I've got to be home and pick up my lad from school. So the first job is get the bait and then set up as fast as we can, hopefully catch some fish. Well folks, quick as a flash, we're all set up, ready to go. I've plumbed up a rig, just got an old rig out of my box, luckily it had a hook on. Plumbed up a rig down the side, found the right depth, didn't even bother cutting the rig down. We're literally fishing straight away, within, what, 5 minutes? And all I'm going to do is I've got those maggots that I've just bought from the shop. I'm just going to hook 2 maggots and start off by throwing sort of like half a dozen to a dozen maggots into the swim and seeing what we can catch. I'm hoping we catch a few little barbel, but there's crusions, there's tench, little bream, roach, carp, there's everything in this lake. It's a brilliant little lake. As I say, if we can get a good hour's fishing with a few different species, I'll be over the moon. Obviously we're near the road, but it's not an overly busy road. We'll just get the odd car passing by every now and again. I've probably not got the right elastic in this pole for this lake, because obviously it's a margin pole. I'm catching little fish with sort of smallish hooks, and I've got a red reactor core in the pole as an elastic, which is a strong elastic. It's like a really strong hollow elastic. I'll probably do with something a little bit lighter, but we'll see how it goes. Like I say, there is the odd carp in this lake, so if we do hook one, we might be pleased we've got that heavy elastic in there. You can see I fished to the side. Obviously, the water's still warm. We're wearing a t-shirt. I don't think those fish are going to want to be in that deeper water straight out in front, so I've gone slightly to the side. 2 reasons. Obviously, it gives me the option of some slightly shallower water, but also, when I net my fish, we can net the fish well away from where I'm fishing. Obviously, if I'm playing my fish right on top of where I'm presenting my rig, it's going to cause problems. But this way, we're well away from where I'm fishing. Just had a little indication then. Usually the action's pretty good on here. Start off catching a few little fish and then some bigger fish move in, but we'll see. We've had some cold nights recently, so it might be a little bit slower. I've got the rig set sort of like an inch over depth, which I think with maggots it's nice to lay a tiny bit of line on the bottom, and most of the time fish sort of grab onto maggots a little bit better. They hold onto them for a little bit longer, so it's not like a bait like pellets or corn where a fish might suck it in and blow it out really quickly. Obviously maggots, if the fish is grabbing onto a bit longer, might move away, and we're going to see bites anyway. Got the float dotted right down. So any little indication we should spot it. A little indication then. Might have to come even shallower, you know, from what I'm seeing at the minute. I've had two sort of like movements on the float, and I think they were both from fish up in the water, but we'll try and settle the feed down a little bit. That was definitely a bite. Feeding quite regularly at the minute, just to get a few fish in the area, and then as we get a few fish there, I think what I'll do is I'll settle the feed down, probably feed more bait but less frequently. There we go, first fish. Let's see what he is. Let's see what it is. That didn't take long, did it? Look at that. Skim on, only just hooked. Hook fell out in the net, look. But that is a great little start. We've got probably 45 minutes, an hour maybe, before I've got to pick my lad up from school. And just to get a few bites is what it's all about. So, a few more maggots. Just hooked that was, obviously you could see, but again, the elastic's a little bit too strong for these fish, but it's all we've got, it's all that's in the van. The hook should be okay. I'd rather use sort of like an 18. This is a 16. I'd rather use an 18 or even a 20 for these fish. But there's a 16 on this rig. I didn't really want to change it because, like I say, it might just help with that heavy elastic. It might just hold onto the fish a little bit better. Cool, bite straight away. There's some fish there now. Feeding all the time. Obviously this pole, it's rated up to like 30 elastic. There's no need to be worrying about the pole breaking. But I don't think we'll get any issues today with the fish we're going to catch. There've been tiny little tiny dips on the float, every little bite so far. There we go, there's another fish. Oh, he's jumping out of the water. It's a bit bigger this time. God. Look at that, much bigger. Look at that for a fish. Just down the edge. Oh, just down the edge. Only just started fishing, we're catching fish straight away. I mean, most commercial fisheries are stocked full of fish like this, and I think so often we overcomplicate things. It just shows that you can rock up with a little bit of bait, a few maggots. Obviously we're really lucky here that you can buy your bait at the shop. But a few maggots, a little pole, and catch obviously a load of fish. Hopefully we'll get some other fish apart from just skimmers and bream. But let me tell you, I wouldn't mind catching one of those every put in. A tiny little indication. You can see feeding all the time. Yeah, we've got a pint of maggots there. We're probably in the hour that we've got, we might get through that pint. Tell you what, there's loads of fish there. Loads of fish there. Bumped a fish. Let's change the bait, see if we can hook our fish a little bit better. I'm just going to try a single maggot. It's a big hook for a single maggot, but we'll try it. Okay, more bait. Amazing. Amazing how many indications we're getting already. It just shows that everything eats maggots. Let's see what this one is. Oh, another skimmer. Looks like these skimmers are first on the scene. They have matches on this venue, on this lake. Just sort of like 10 or 15 peg matches. And I wouldn't mind catching one of them skimmers every put in. Where I'm lowering the rig in, obviously we're on a shelf there, just laying it up the shelf. So I'm always swinging my hook bait out into the lake and then just slightly dragging the float up and letting the float sort of settle quite slowly. Look at that, perfect. Tiny little bite just as the bait settled there. And we're into a fish. What's this one? Ooh, something a little bit different. That's an oar, which you could see there, just as the bait settled, double maggot in its mouth. Absolutely stunning fish, maybe close on to 14 ounce, maybe even a pound. But you can see there, classic oar behaviour. Just as the bait settled or on the drop, and he's had a snatch at it. So laying that rig in nice and slowly is well worth it. Let's talk about how I've shotted the rig, because obviously I'm well aware that these fish like to watch the bait fall. So I've got number 10 slot shot on the rig. It's a 4x12s rig, and I've got 6 number 10 slot shot just spaced sort of in the bottom third of the rig, just to give it a nice slow fall in that bottom third, and just so I've got a bit of control as well down there. The hook length's 8-inch, which, like I say, we're roughing it a little bit today. A 4-inch would be better. 4-inch hook length would be better for these smaller fish, but we're roughing it a little bit today. And this is just a rig that I've had set up from my last trip out. Another little oar, only a small one that time. Beautiful colours though, bright red fins. It's just amazing how you can just turn up and just get a bite of chuck. It's a brilliant way of fishing. Double maggot is definitely the bait. Although if I miss bites, I'll probably switch back to a single again. There you go, laying that rig in. Now holding it on a tight line, just letting it come down. Hook bait's just settling now. Oh, bumped that one. And obviously I'm feeding all the time. I want a constant column of bait going through the water. It's obvious that there's loads of fish there, so you've got to feed them. And if I want some bait to settle on the bottom, maybe catch some bigger fish, some tench or some barbel, which are obviously notorious bottom feeders, we've got to make sure that some bait gets down there. Little tiny tap, tap, tap on the float all the time. And obviously you can see the float dotted right down, so every little indication I spot that.
Obviously if there's a bit of ripple on the water, we'd probably have a bit more float sticking out. There's no point having a float if you can't see it. But for the way these fish are feeding, we definitely need as little resistance as possible. Fish almost took it out of my hand then, just as I was lowering it down. We're getting loads of bites. Like I said, a 4-inch hook length would be loads better. But with the little bit of kit we've got, let's see if we can make it work. It just shows though, to catch plenty of fish, you don't need a lot of gear. We're getting a right mixture of fish. We've had perch, or roach, I've just seen a lovely ghost carp cruising around. So he's about 4 or 5 pound, maybe a little bit bigger. If he comes around again, we might shallow this rig up and try and slap it in front of him. But as it is, we're having a lovely session catching these. Another oar, look, another hide. They are brilliant fish. Feed all year round. Eat loads of bait. Really aggressive feeders. And if they're in the swim, you know you can get through a lot of bait. Not the easiest fish to catch though, that's the problem. You sort of snatch at a bait. Just keep an eye out for that carp. If he swims around again, it'd be a nice little bonus. I was thinking of plumbing up 2 lines, but as it is, I don't think we're going to need a second line. I think we'll be able to catch a few fish off this line for as long as we need to. Feeding all the time. Oh, there's a lot of these in here now. This lake's had loads of changes over the years. I remember it being quite a deep lake, stocked with, you know, really mainly carp, and then it turned into a lake with an island in the middle. And then obviously the guys that are here now, Dan and Ada, they've taken the island out. There's a bit of a sunken island in the middle, and they've got lakes on the complex that have got loads of carp in. So obviously they've just decided that this smaller lake at the front of the complex, they'll keep it for proper fishing, as they like to call it. Smaller fish, loads of bites, loads of different species, plenty of maggots going in now. Every time I hook a fish, there's a load of maggots going in. I think he's a swinger. Quite a few F1s in this lake, so I'm surprised they've not made an appearance yet, but obviously I'm guessing with these eyed, nothing else is getting a look in. I think even with this little short pole, yeah, it's only 4 meters long, we're not really limiting ourselves. So every time I hook a fish, I'm feeding some bait pretty quickly. So I've got my hand in the tub at the minute already. I've got probably 20 maggots in my hand, in my fingers, ready to feed. And what I'll do is when I hook a fish, feed that bait, because that's my best opportunity of getting some bait down to the bottom. Obviously when I hook one like that. When I hook one, there's obviously quite a commotion. A few fish spook out of the peg. And if I can feed, oh, it's a nice, biggest one of the day, I'd guess. If I can feed a bit of bait while there's all that commotion in the swim, obviously those fish, look at that for a fish. Those fish won't be able to get that, as much of that bait, and some of it will settle on the bottom. That's the theory. So when I drop in now, hopefully I'm fishing over some bait rather than it getting obliterated up in the water. Well, hey, let me tell you folks, this is one of the target species. Look at that. Cracking little crucian carp. Hardly anywhere you catch these fish anymore. I remember going to like little farm ponds when I was younger, catching little crucian carp, and you just don't seem to catch them anywhere. But there's a few of the little fellas in here, and there's a chance of catching one that's slightly bigger. There's not massive ones in here, but I'd say that was a small one for this lake. So it'd be nice if we can catch a slightly bigger one of those. Just give you a mid-session update. So the way I'm fishing now and feeding the peg, because I'm wanting to settle everything down, I was catching an orth or an ide, whatever you want to call them, every single put in. And obviously they love to feed up in the water, they love to intercept bait. So what I've decided on doing is just trying to feed a little bit less frequently, and I'm feeding when I hook a fish. So I'm not feeding any bait while my rig's in the water. I'm presenting my rig, hopefully hooking a fish. Let's see if we can hit the bite this time. So lay the rig into the swim. I've got my hand in the bait tub already. And I'm feeding quite a big quantity of bait, so probably, I don't know, 50 maggots at a time. But I'm trying to feed them after I've hooked a fish, so all that bait, or most of it, is getting to the bottom that way. And that way we can hopefully target some other fish. There's still the odd orth there, I know there is, but we're getting less and less now. Obviously we've had that little crucian, a couple of skimmers. I mean, don't get me wrong, it'd be great to catch whatever fish it is. I don't mind catching one a chuck, but there's so many different species in here that it's nice to... So look, hooked a fish, feed some bait. Let's see what this is. Look at that, another species, little F1. We're definitely on the species hunt. Little F1, and obviously you can just see, look how lightly he's hooked, just in the top lip. And obviously, it's probably one of the reasons I'm missing a few bites, because they're only small F1s, probably sort of like 10 ounce. But you can see, just by altering the way that we're feeding, we've now changed the species that we're catching. And I'm hoping the more bait that gets on the bottom, the more chance we've got of catching a barbel. I've been catching loads of barbel on the rivers at the minute, or recently. So it'd be nice to catch a few on a commercial as well. Obviously there's a few people that aren't really keen on barbel in commercials, but I've never seen any barbel suffering in a commercial. Oh, a little bit bigger. It's actually pulling some of the elastic out. Let's see what this could be. So you can see, obviously, the way we're feeding the peg, it's made such a difference to what we're catching. too sure what this is. There's some tench in this lake that are a little bit bigger. Obviously there's some carp, but let's see what he is. Oh, he's a carp, little mirror carp. We're definitely, I'm going to hold this guy up for you because he's a nice little fish. If we were getting points for species, we'd be flying. Look at that. Cracking little fish. Probably, what, £2 maybe? No problem for the margin pole and the red reactor core. I was a little bit overgunned for him, I'd say. But as always, this is where the top anglers make the difference in a competition, because you'll watch a top match angler and he'll change his feeding all through the day and the way he presents his rigs. He's always looking for those different species of fish, and he also understands the way that different fish feed. So it's always great just to come out for, like we're doing here, and just have a mess around, just learn a few things, learn how the fish are feeding, learn how different species react when you do different things with your bait. Another handful of maggots going in. Tell you what, I'm going to call this as a little crucian again. He's going around in circles. Classic crucian. There we go. Stunning. Look at that. Stunning little fish. Beautiful fish. Not many places you can go and catch those anymore. Absolutely brilliant. Another little crucian, look. Can't believe how many of these little crucians are in this lake. Tiny little fish, but one day it'll be a specimen, no doubt. I'm upping the feed all the time. I've not got much time left before I've got to make a move, or I'll get shouted at when I get home. So I'm upping the feed all the time. I'm just pushing it now, just to see if we can catch a few different fish. So every time I hook a fish, it's 2 good handfuls of maggots, and we're not getting anywhere near the amount of eye. There we go. He's a bit chunkier this time. It's a crucian a chuck. Where can you go and catch a crucian a chuck? That is brilliant fishing. A crucian every chuck. You cannot beat that. Stunning little fish. I remember catching a couple of little crucians out of the local canal, but those days seem like a million years ago now. I've not heard of a crucian carp coming out of our canal for years. Again, it's the same old story, presenting the rigs exactly the same. We know the rig's right, the rig's working nicely. It's just all about the feed now. So every time we hook a fish, 2 good handfuls of maggots. We'll go, little F1, tiny little F1 this time. I mean, these are the reasons I think we're missing a few bites. These tiny little F1s. I mean, this lake is absolutely rammed with fish. Double maggot. I think next time, obviously I'll come with the correct gear next time if we have a proper session on here. But I think what I'm going to do is leave this pole set up like this, because obviously it's perfect for if we do fish for big carp, so we're right near some snags. It's the ideal setup. But also, I'm thinking for my lad, he's only 8, and occasionally we pop down here and catch a few fish, and obviously it's perfect for him. He can fish close in, chuck a few maggots at his float, and have a great, maybe a couple of hours fishing. So I think I'll leave it set up with this elastic in, and it's a pole that will do a couple of jobs. Might just have overcooked it with the bait a little bit, but we want bites to slow down really. Now we're targeting some quality fish. We probably want to slow the peg down a little bit. You know, I've made a massive change. I've obviously doubled the amount of bait that I'm putting into the swim, so it's a drastic change, that is. But as you can see, I can't keep my hand out of the bait tub. I love feeding bait, and now seems an ideal time to feed a load. I mean, we've had a brilliant day already. Well, a brilliant 45 minutes, let's say, already. So there's no harm in pushing it and trying to just see what we can get out of the peg. I mean, that float's sitting beautifully. Just try dragging it up the shelf a little bit, just to lay a little bit of line on the bottom, just to see a little indication then. Definitely slowed things down putting that bait in. So again, the change, we know the rig's right, so let's just change our feeding and just use that to alter what's happening in the peg. You know, even in a little short session that we've had, we can see that just by changing the feeding, we've probably changed the feeding 5 or 6 times in 40 minutes, and it's made a difference every single time we've changed it. You know, difference to the species, a difference to what speed we're getting our bites at. You know, it's made a difference without a doubt, just changing our feeding. Double maggot has been the best bait, but I think that's mainly down to the size of hook I'm using. Like I say, if I was using a smaller hook, I think single maggot, you just get bites so fast on a single maggot. Would you get, there you go, look, little perch. The perch has joined in on the species hunt. Obviously I've stuck on double maggot. Let's have a chuck on single maggot. Let's just see what we can catch on a single maggot on this hook. Caught a few fish on it earlier, but obviously once there's a lot of bait in the swim, I like a bait that stands out from the loose feed a bit more. Single maggot's great early on in a session when you're only feeding sort of like 10 maggots. Obviously it's a 1 in 10 chance of the fish picking up your bait. But if you put a double maggot on, you've got a bigger target bait, more chance of the fish picking up your bait, and obviously that's important when you feed more and more bait. So folks, it's 20 to 3. I've got probably 5 minutes maximum before, there we go, first roach of the day. I've got 5 minutes maximum before I've got to pack up and go. I'm a little bit disappointed. I've not had my barb on. I've not had a tench either. There's loads of tench in this lake. But you know what? I've had a bite every single drop in. And I think the fact that I've caught those crucians has made up for it. You know, what have we had? We've had loads of orth, crucians, skimmers, roach, perch. We've had an F1, we've had a carp. It's been fantastic, really. Just to get out, sort of an hour. You know, who's going to miss you for an hour? You know, you go out for an hour, no one's going to be bothered that you've popped out of the house for an hour. I'm really lucky, obviously. I've got a fishery almost on my doorstep. 5 minutes, 10 minutes down the road. But even, you know, trying to just grab an hour, even just going down the canal for an hour, just to get your fishing fix. As I said earlier, and as you can see now, it's just starting to rain, so it proves a point, really. The summer is over all too quickly. And we've had, obviously, our fishing time cut short anyway at the start of the year, for obvious reasons. So just to get a little bit of extra fishing done, little F1, look, another little F1. Just to get a bit of extra fishing done, I'm trying to grab every opportunity I can, because, as we all know, sooner or later, we'll be sitting on a ice cold lake, scratching around for a bite. And as soon as winter comes, it's a long old winter usually. So I'm really keen to make hay while the sun shines. I'm a bit disappointed that the rain's decided to turn up, but we haven't got long anyway. 2 minutes left. I've got to be strict. I can't be late. It's not a great excuse, is it? I was fishing. It's such a shame to leave, obviously. Leave a load of fish that are obviously in a feeding mood. Such a shame to leave them there. I suppose there's always next time. Oh, that was nearly crucian number 5. Just pulled out. Tiny little fish. One thing's for sure. Next time we visit this lake, we're going to have to use lighter gear. That elastic is way too fierce. I think we've probably got through 3/4 of a pint of maggots in 50 minutes. So it shows you needed to feed the fish. One thing's for sure, when I did start double handing, it was way too much. You know, one nice big handful after every fish has been absolutely spot on. And when I started chucking 2 in, it was just way too much, and it just killed it really. It's just way too much bait. So one good handful as soon as I hook a fish. Obviously, by the time I bait up now and ship out again, that bait's settled on the bottom. Tell you what, looking at the time, have we got time for one last fish? You know what? I think we've got to leave it at that. Beautiful crucian to finish the session. I can't be late for my lad picking up from school, even if I'm enjoying myself. Beautiful little session. So many different species of fish. It's starting to rain now. I don't care. I'm packing the gear away. Cheers for watching. If you like this video, click up there. There'll be another video for you to watch. Click down there to subscribe. It helps me out massively. Until next time, tight lines.